right. I think we're live now. Okay. Hey everyone. Nice to meet you. So I'm Jason, and then I have also Kishore. Here we're co-founders and authors of Typesense. And it's actually one of our first calls where we're talking about Typesense's roadmap publicly. We've been asked for it a couple of times over these years, and in our case, since the roadmap keeps changing dynamically, it's been hard to pin down what the roadmap looks like even a couple of months out, which is why we've been putting it off. But then we finally found some time, and I think we'll be consistent about maintaining the roadmap going forward. So we'll also be sharing it on GitHub. So we've used GitHub projects to put it together. So we'll also keep it up to date as we're planning roadmap as we go forward. So the way we'll do this particular event is that we'll first talk about how we plan the roadmap. I think that should give you some context into why certain things are not there and why certain things are there in the roadmap, and also how often the roadmap changes and things like that. And then we'll jump into what features are going to ship in the upcoming release in v0.22. And then we'll talk about what some key features in 0.23. And then finally, we'll have someone who has integrated with Typesense, Typesense user, talk about how their experience was, what are the features that they're using, etc. So, all right. So with that said, also while we're doing the event, there's a Q&A section that you'll find. Feel free to ask questions there. And we'll respond to them, as we go along. Or if we missed it, we'll come back to a round of Q&A at the end. All right. So with that, let me share my screen here. All right. You should be able to see my screen now. All right. So this is a roadmap. So if you go to our main Typesense core project, you should see it under the projects tab. And you should now see a Typesense public roadmap tab here. So the key thing, so you can read through this, how we plan our roadmap, etc. But I wanted to highlight this. So we do what's called just-in-time planning. So we probably plan maybe 2 months in advance. And even within that window, we tend to constantly or regularly groom the backlog and reprioritize things based on how how our user feedback is. So that's one key thing why the roadmap changes often is if we hear feedback about certain things, then we adjust dynamically as we go along. So which is why we also don't plan more than 2 months in advance, because things could change dramatically. So I would call this a feature in that we respond in real time to feedback that we're getting. And in terms of how we prioritize, so we first look at, of course, we offer a prioritized support for users, for paying users. So we prioritize issues that they raise first, and then we prioritize Typesense Cloud users. And then if you're a GitHub sponsor, then we prioritize those issues. And also, in parallel to that, we try to also balance it with any features that are commonly asked by the community. If there are a lot of asks for it, or if there's an issue that's affecting a large number of people, or if there's a particular user that we're super excited about that probably that we haven't thought about, or we've thought about and we've been waiting until someone else brings it up, like a user brings it up before we start working on it. I think those are the features that we also balance with the first set of users that ask us for features. So I'd say, of course, besides prioritized support and using Typesense Cloud and sponsoring us on GitHub, the other best ways to get a particular feature prioritized, I would say, is if first search for it on GitHub in our issue tracker. If you find it there, add your use case to it and say, this is how this feature would be useful to me. I think that context is very valuable for us. And that helps us prioritize particular features. And if there are a lot of people, giving us interesting use cases for a particular feature, then that also excites us that it's going to be a useful feature. So then it rises up in priority as well. So given this style of roadmap planning, our release cadence also doesn't tend to be on a fixed cycle. It's not like a release train that you might typically see in other projects, or sometimes companies do this as well. So what we do is, when we accumulate a set of critical features over a month or a month and a half to 2 months, and if it reaches a point where the number of features are good enough and we think that this could be another major release, then we put the code base on a feature freeze, not a code freeze, but a feature freeze, so that we don't end up adding any more major features. And then we let it kind of simmer and make sure it reaches enough of stability as different users are using it. We also publish release candidates every 1 to 2 weeks of all the features. And as these features are getting used by users and we're getting feedback with all the different release candidate builds that we put out, once we're confident that this build is stable and can be run run by a majority of our users, that's when we then convert the latest release candidate into a generally available release and publish it on GitHub and announce it as a GA release. So which is why you won't find us, like, we don't do like monthly releases, for example. And this is part of the reason is we want to make sure every build has enough of features that want to make you upgrade to begin with, and it's also stable as we keep releasing or as we keep adding more features. So right now, for example, so I'd say v0.22 has been in feature freeze for about 3 weeks or so now, and we're like still working on some like last mile issues, and people have already started using the various RCs and have been giving us feedback. So we're working on fixing the last mile issues, and then once it's ready, then probably in a week or two, then we'll be publishing it as a GA release. And the other thing I would also add is that these like RC builds are not, even within RC builds, we still look at some level of stability. So the issues that you might run into RC builds are probably very specific edge cases that particular users run into. So I would encourage you to run the RC like even in production to see how it works for your use case, and then give us feedback based on that if things are working well, or if you notice any issues on your particular environment or data set. So yeah, so that's how we plan our roadmap and our release cadence. And then Kishore, do you want to talk about what's coming up in v0.22?
Sure. So one of the things that we are very excited about is the dynamic filtering. So we have overrides at the moment where you can say that we've given this search query, put these results on top or remove these results. All right. So kind of dynamic filtering takes it forward and says that for this particular query, add this filter, right? Which is really powerful, because you can have something like some color shoes or something like that, and then you can say that if there is a yellow shoe, and then add the color as a filter, right? So you can add dynamic filtering to your queries that kind of ensures removes the noise from your search results, because filtering always gives you removes the ambiguity in your results. Another thing that we have from the back end, from the infrastructure perspective, what we have really worked on is improving the performance of updates. If you look at updates, they will be at least 3 to 4 times faster. We have refactored our internal data structures to get that, and we also have spent a lot of time supporting parallel inserts. If you're having let's say hundreds of collections and you're always writing to all of them at the same time, previously it used to be single threaded. Now we kind of scale out, and we are able to utilize all the cores and index multiple collections in parallel. There are a lot of small features that we have also looked at, for example, configuring our typo tolerance based on string length, and supporting searching of non-alphanumeric characters. This one is of course a much bigger feature. Previously what there was no way to if you wanted to index the symbols plus, or C++ has the characters plus, right? So there was no way to actually index the symbols. So we have started allowing that. So these are like some of my most favorite features coming up. If you check out, I don't want to go into every one of them. There are quite a few there. If you can just check out the projects, and you can see what is coming up.
Cool. Let's see, and a couple of other bug fixes as well. I think this one is interesting. The cache. Do you want to touch on that?
Right.
Sure.
So yeah. So one thing we have heard feedback is like, while Typesense is really fast in lot of cases, there might be particular cases where if you would want it to be cached on the server side, because there's something that maybe people keep, some popular queries that people keep coming across. There's no point doing the search over and over again. Even if it is fast, it just makes sense to cache it, especially if your data is not going to change that often. So we've added a feature for you to do server-side caching, where when you make a query, you can just say that, cache this query, and then you can give a TTL, a time to live, that says how long you want that cache to be available. So you can say like, okay, I know that I'm going to update my products only, let's say, every few hours. Then I can very easily cache my results like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, even without having there will be no decay in the data that is being shown to the users. They'll still be fresh because I'm not going to update my data set that often. So that's server-side caching. And we also have a nice circuit breaker feature, which we have added, which will kind of, let's say you have some queries that are really heavy, some queries involving stop words, where there is really no point going and searching all the records, because let's say somebody's searching for the word "the" or "and," right? That's not really going to give very relevant results. So if you just want to say that, I do not want such queries to be running for a very long time, you can have you can mention circuit breaker milliseconds value that you can specify and say like, okay, don't run queries more than 200 milliseconds, for example. So what the Typesense engine will do is, okay, I'll keep running. Once I hit that cutoff value, I will stop at that point, and then I will produce the results. It's not a hard limit, because since there are so many things happening in the engine, there is no way to guarantee like a really hard limit, but it gives a hint to the type sensitive. So if you mention 200 milliseconds, it might take just a little over, it might be take a little less, depending on how the actual search gets distributed. But it gives you a way to ensure that it doesn't run for like multiple seconds. That it kind of gives you that kind of guarantee too. Um,
Cool.
the other thing I would talk about is the tokenization around, like, let's say you want to split words on hyphen or underscore. Previously, you had to split it beforehand, and then like pre-tokenize your text before you kind of indexed it into Typesense. Now you can do this you can configure this on the Typesense. You can say that, I want to, these are the symbols on which I want to tokenize my words. So if you can have hyphen and underscore and like these common word separators, and then Typesense will do that chunking and then indexing them as individual words. This is also quite a frequently asked feature, which the only workaround previously was to tokenize on your own, which we have like moved away from. Now you can configure this and let Typesense do it for you.
Cool. All right, so that's V0.22, and then we've named it medium term, but we generally tend to pick items from this column for the release after the upcoming one. So in, say, V0.23, the biggest thing that we're planning to tackle, and this has come up several times now, is being able to do in-place schema changes. So today, if you need to change your schema, maybe you want to add another field that's a facet, you have two options. One is you could use auto schema detection and use a wildcard field and say anything that ends with underscore facet, for example, automatically mark it as a facet. So if you don't use auto schema detection, or if you want to change an existing field that has that was already indexed and now you want to convert it into a facet, the only other way is to then create a whole new collection and then reindex the data, and then maybe use the alias feature to then switch your application to point to the new collection. And what this feature is going to do is you're going to be able to do in-place upgrades, so you don't have to create a whole new collection. You can just change the schema for an existing collection. And internally, we're essentially like reindexing the data instead of you having to do it from your end. Then another interesting feature, again, we're surprised how many times this has come up now, is what's called phrase query. So that if you're searching multi-word queries, and if you put a quote around them, today, I mean, we don't look at the quotes. We search for Harry separately, and then we search for Potter separately in this particular example. But what this feature would do is essentially we'll search for the entire phrase so that it'll only return documents where Harry and Potter appear right next to each other. So that's something that we're planning to add potentially in the next feature. Again, I would say these are two features that are highly probable to make it into the next release. And after this, depending on other things that might come up, or so many things that change based on all the things that I mentioned earlier, we'll then slowly start including it. So once this is released, you'll probably see us add another column saying v0.23, and anything that exists in that column is what is certainly going to make it into that release. So that's about the roadmap. Let's probably pause here and see if we have any Q&A. So we have a question asked from Luis. He's asked, does Hacktober have an impact on issue activity commits on Typesense? So we did have very good contributions from Hacktoberfest. And I would say the biggest highlight is from our conversion of our JavaScript library into TypeScript. That's been sitting around for several months now. And we had to, basically, both Kishore and myself didn't know TypeScript, so one of us had to pick it up and do it. And, I kept putting it off for a long time. And then we asked the Hacktoberfest community to see if anyone could help. And then actually, before that, another contributor of us, Nick, had taken it almost like, I'd say 85% of the way. And then, to take it to the remaining side, then Damien from the community jumped in. We also had Adam as well helping in review stuff, and a whole bunch of other users give us feedback. I think we're almost ready to ship it out. So that was, I would say, a huge win from from Hacktoberfest. And then the other, the other question is it possible to link Typesense with my HarperDB? So I haven't used HarperDB myself. As long as you can export the data with queries, you can run like a cron job to bulk insert it into Typesense. But I don't know, Kishore, if you've heard about HarperDB and have used it.
No, I haven't heard of it. But in general, the integrations are, as with any other database, usually the databases don't really allow you to have any hooks that you can write to another database. So the way you would do it is to have a synchronizing system that kind of queries. If, for example, MongoDB publishes change streams that allows you to listen to the writes that happen, updates, and so on that happen in real time, and you can use that to publish it into Typesense. With MongoDB, we have an extension, but I'm not sure whether HarperDB has that feature. If it exists, we appreciate community contributions. We'll certainly accept that.
Cool. All right. So the remaining part of this call, so we have one of our Typesense users. So coincidentally, the platform that we're hosting this event on, called Aviyel.com. So they are also a Typesense user. So that's a nice coincidence, I should say. And we have Jeff from Aviyel, who's going to talk about how they use Typesense within on the platform, and how their experience integrating, and any potential new features that they're planning to implement as well. So Jeff, over to you.
Hi everyone. I'm Jeff. Am I audible? Can you guys hear me? Okay. So my name is Jeff, and Jibin is also here, I think, in the audience. So he's our CTO, and I take care of the backend here. So Aviyel is our product, and we are building up Aviyel as a platform to help open source projects and open source developers become sustainable and monetize their work in any way they can. It could be through support, it could be through outreach, all kinds of things. So we want to be like a Shopify for open source projects. So I have like a couple of slides, which I'll run you guys through the slides, and so I'll be telling you guys how we use Typesense in our platform. So yeah, let's get started, and feel free to like stop me and ask questions. So yeah, we are Aviyel, and what we do, I just explain what we do. So now is the interesting part of how Typesense fits into our scheme of things here. Being a platform, what we want to do is we want to like aggregate a lot of the different content open source projects generate and open source developers write. So even our vision is to bring all the different places where people write content. It could be Stack Overflow, it could be a Slack channel, it could be GitHub issues. So we want to like help the end user be able to like find what he's looking for in one place. That's one of our goals. So search becomes a very integral part of our whole platform, and so we kept looking at different options. There were a lot of different. There are a lot of different search engines and products out there, and we've used Elasticsearch and a lot of other projects, and we chose Typesense because it was like really easy to set up and get going. Defining the schemas was very easy, and also it was like very resource light. So it was like easy to like set up. Even on your local, you can just run the binary and it's like up and running. And on production too, it's like it was simple and easy for us to get everything going. And so that's how we ended up with Typesense. And at Aviyel, we have the search part of things, which is powered by Typesense. Our feeds are also, so we have a highlight feed like on the homepage that is also being powered by Typesense. So with that, I'm going to explain a few of the features in Typesense that we use. One of the most basic thing that Typesense gives you, like all other search engines, is the facets. And faceting is very important because when you have like fairly complex data, you want a lot of different filters and you want like selections to fine tune your results and to easily get to what you're looking for. So on a fun afternoon, this is what our search page currently looks like. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there are a lot of different filters. So you can filter by tag, you can filter by content type, you can choose to search in the comments, or you can choose not to search in the comments. So all of this is powered by the facets that Typesense gives you. And then another feature that we use is the multiple collections part. Collections is sort of the table equivalent in Typesense land. So we have like logically disparate data sets. We have projects, we have content, which is like posts, questions, polls. Then we have like project related data. So it makes sense for us to keep them separate. Putting all of that into the same bucket becomes really, really unwieldy for us. So we keep them to separate buckets, separate collections. And so this is a like new search page. So every time you search for a single query, we fetch data we search in all these different collections, and then we have a single consolidated search page where you can see all the results from the different collections also. And again, like, as our search is getting more comprehensive, there are more filters. Now you can search by project, you can search by tags, you can search by the type of content, and faceting becomes like really important. And Typesense setting up the facets is like fairly simple. It also lets you configure the number of results that you can get per facet and the number of facets that you want to show. And getting all this up and running in Typesense is fairly easy and simple. So that helps us. Then another feature that we use is the Federated Search, which is the ability to fire multiple search requests at your collections and at the same time. So we only have to send one query, and then the system takes care of searching across the collections and getting us the results. So we use it in two places. The first most obvious place is when in our search page we want to show results from separate collections. This is very handy because you don't have to like fire two requests and then get the results and wait for both of them to be successful. You can just send all your parameters together at once and Typesense searches in all the collections. Then slightly more complicated use case is keeping the filters sort of fixed. This is actually a video. I've shared the link with you guys. Let me see if I can play this. Oops. Okay. So the idea is that in any e-commerce site or any kind of a search system. Okay, for whatever reason I'm not able to like run the video, but it's there in the slides that I've shared. So okay, I'm just gonna try to like talk my way through this. The idea is that when you search for something and then you select one of the filters, the other filters in that particular so for example here you can see content type. So once you select blog, the other things shouldn't just vanish. You want the other options to be available. And when you have like multiple filters, that gets a little complicated because now you have to fire all the different combinations so that you can see all the possible filters for the given search query. So that's only possible if you can fire all these multiple requests. And that is again something that Typesense gives you out of the box. You can send all these multiple combinations and Typesense just gives you all those results. So that's where the federated search helps us. So why did we choose Typesense? There are a lot of other systems out there. Like I was saying, we experimented with Elasticsearch. We have experience with Elasticsearch, and it's a little. It is feature complete and it does everything possible under the sun, but it's a little difficult to get it up and running, and it's also a little resource intensive. So for us, Typesense made sense because it was really easy to define the schemas, set up the collections, start pushing data and querying it and getting the results. Was really fast. So for us to get started and get going with Typesense was really quick. So that's one of the reasons why we chose Typesense. So pushing our data to Typesense, our data is pushed asynchronously, almost in real time. So we have a background task which pushes the data to Typesense, and it almost happens in real time. So the user feels it like it's instantaneous. And another thing, since we are in our very early stages, our schemas are constantly changing. So for us, we have to constantly index and re-index our collections. So sometimes we just drop the index and recreate a fresh index. We've started using the alias feature, but the in-place schema modification that you guys were talking about is going to be really useful for us, because we keep making changes to our collection all the time. So that's about how we push data. So this is sort of like a high-level overview of our architecture. Typesense helps us do the search. So we have multiple components in our system. So we have a NodeBB powers our posts and all the textual content. Then we have the event system, which powers the conferencing platform that we are currently using. And Typesense plays a crucial role in all of this by powering all the search, be it content, be it event-related things. All the search is powered by Typesense. So this is sort of our sort of the block diagram which talks about how we push data to Typesense. All our data, like posts, events, polls, projects, everything is like pushed. And searching again happens through Typesense. And yeah, and with that, I end my presentation. So that's how we started with Typesense, and that's where we are with Typesense. We are quite happy with it, and yeah, if you guys have any questions.
Awesome, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about Elasticsearch. That's a common thing that I keep hearing is, Elasticsearch does everything. Of course, Typesense, we're not trying to be feature parity with Elasticsearch. So instead, we're trying to focus on just a few use cases and then do it really well. So I'm glad to see that resonated with you as you were looking at search solutions. By the way, I guess maybe slightly off topic, but out of curiosity, I'm curious why you guys or where you use temporal. I saw that in the slide deck.
We initially started using temporal in our data. We have a data aggregation part where we fetch data from GitHub, data from Slack, and then we kind of put it together. That piece was initially done with temporal. I mean, orchestrating the whole thing. So now that, since that worked well for us, we are sort of using temporal across the platform. So we are moving all our background jobs and crons to temporal.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I've been recently hearing more and more about temporal, so I should probably check it out sometime.
Yeah, it's sort of like bleeding edge orchestration. It lets you pause the task and then replay it and do all that. So
Cool. All right. So thank you, Jeff, again for walking us through your use case of Typesense. So I don't see any other questions here from the audience. So feel free. I mean, this video is recorded, so we'll be posting it back in our Slack community. And again, as a reminder, if you would like a feature that you really need to be prioritized in Typesense, the best way is to besides prioritize support and sponsoring us on GitHub and using Typesense Cloud, the best way is to then add your use case, or even if you do all of the things that I mentioned before, still add your use case to an issue if it already exists, or create a new issue and add your use case about how you will be using the feature, and that gives us a lot of context to prioritize the roadmap. So so with that, we're done. Unless Kishore, you have any final thoughts, words?
Nope, I don't have anything from my.
Awesome. All right. So this was our first of many calls talking about the roadmap. So we will probably also try to do this in different times to accommodate everyone around in different time zones. So stay tuned. We'll come back with more updates as we build up Typesense. And thank you so much for all your support over these years. We're making some exciting progress here with Typesense. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.